The Galactic Trial. Admiral Sarah Chen felt the cold weight of the Council's gaze as she stood before them, the flickering lights of distant stars casting a ghostly glow through the chamber. She took a steadying breath. This moment would determine Earth's future in the galaxy. The past 30 years had been a whirlwind of discovery, but today's presentation was humanity's most critical test. The chamber itself was an awe-inspiring structure, a place where civilizations from across the universe gathered to decide the fate of less advanced species. It was suspended in the void of space, a transparent platform that allowed those inside to look out into the vast expanse of stars. As Sarah glanced around the room, she felt the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. The beings seated before her were not like humans. They were far beyond physical forms. Some were entities of pure light, shifting geometrically, while others were crystalline beings that seemed to shimmer and pulse with a rhythm that defied human understanding. They were the Galactic Council, beings of unimaginable power, intellect, and wisdom. They had existed for eons, transcending the limits of organic life and mastering advanced technologies that allowed them to manipulate time, space, and dimensions. To them, humans were a curious species, barely scratching the surface of the cosmos. Sarah's gaze drifted to the display at the center of the chamber, where Earth's latest accomplishments were being projected. These achievements, reliable fusion energy, thriving colonies on 3 planets, and successful quantum communications, had taken humanity decades to achieve, yet they seemed trivial in the eyes of the Council. The lights of the display flickered in sync with the Council's low murmurs. Sarah knew that, despite Earth's accomplishments, the Council would never acknowledge them as truly significant until they saw something extraordinary. High Evaluator Anil, a being of light formed by shifting geometric patterns, spoke first, their voice rippling through the chamber like a gentle wave of energy. "Your species has made impressive strides, Earth," Anil said, their tone both dismissive and curious. "Fusion power, interplanetary colonies, and basic quantum communications. Truly remarkable for a species barely out of its infancy. Yet these are milestones we have seen thousands of times before. Your advancements are quaint." A ripple of what Sarah could only describe as polite amusement passed through the Council. She clenched her jaw, but kept her face neutral, maintaining the composed demeanor that had served her well in countless diplomatic encounters. "We acknowledge our youth," Sarah said, her voice steady, "but our rate of advancement surpasses the typical trajectory of most species in their early space age. We believe we have achieved breakthroughs that challenge the conventional understanding of science." At these words, a crystalline being, Zix, leaned forward. Their bodies shimmered, reflecting a spectrum of colors as they fixed their multifaceted eyes on Sarah. "Your theories are interesting," Zix said, their voice cold and clinical, "but they are built on a primitive understanding of dimensionality. Your FTL travel, for example, is nothing more than an attempt to fold space in ways we have long mastered." Behind Sarah, Dr. Maya Patel shifted uncomfortably, the weight of Zix's dismissal clear in the air. Maya was the leading mind behind Earth's quantum research, and the plans they had devised were nothing short of revolutionary. But Sarah knew that if they were to convince the Council, they needed more than just theoretical knowledge. They needed proof. Sarah's mind raced, but she maintained her calm. "We understand the Council's skepticism," she said, "but we request the opportunity to present one final breakthrough, a theoretical discovery that we believe could reshape our understanding of dimensions and energy." The Council exchanged subtle glances, if such beings could be said to glance at all. Finally, High Evaluator Anil spoke again. "Proceed," they said dismissively. "But remember, particle physics demonstrations are strictly prohibited within this chamber." Sarah gave a reassuring smile, signaling to Maya, who stepped forward confidently. Maya activated a small device on her wrist, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing a complex series of equations. The room fell silent as the alien representatives leaned forward, their forms flickering with subtle agitation. Sarah knew they had expected some sort of device or weapon, not a theoretical proposition. "This," Maya said, her voice calm yet firm, "is the Chen-Patel theorem. It demonstrates that dimensional progression is not a linear hierarchical system as traditionally believed. Rather, dimensions are interconnected, allowing for multiple pathways through space and time. It rewrites the very foundation of interdimensional theory." The chamber erupted in near chaos. For a moment, Sarah could hear only the frantic shifting of energy patterns, the hissing murmurs of disbelief that flooded the room. Zix's body rippled violently, their crystalline form flaring in sharp, jagged angles, as if trying to repel the very thought of such an idea. "This is impossible," Zix sputtered. "Such a theory could destabilize everything we have built. It cannot be true." The display continued to pulse with mathematical clarity, showing evidence that, for the first time in galactic history, a species had begun to see dimensions as an interwoven fabric rather than separate planes. Sarah knew that this breakthrough was far more than just a theoretical curiosity. It was the beginning of something that would change the course of human history forever. "We understand the implications of this theorem," Sarah said, her voice taking on a quiet confidence. "But what we are showing is just the beginning. Humanity's true achievement lies not just in understanding dimensionality, but in mastering it. We are only scratching the surface." The Council's agitation grew. Their forms pulsed with outrage and disbelief. Yet, Sarah could see something else, a crack in their certainty, a flicker of doubt. "Remove this equation immediately," Anil ordered, their voice cold as the heart of a dying star. "This is a dangerous path you are treading, Earth." Maya swiftly deactivated the display, but the damage had already been done. The seed of doubt had been planted. The Council, who had long considered themselves the gatekeepers of knowledge and power, had been forced to confront the unsettling possibility that humanity had discovered something new, something that could fundamentally alter the universe. As they turned to leave, Sarah felt a strange sense of triumph. It wasn't their achievements that had made an impact. It was the promise of what was to come. They had cracked the surface of the galaxy's greatest mystery, and once the Council realized that, it would be too late. "Did you see their reactions?" Maya whispered, her face lit with excitement. "They didn't know what to make of it." Sarah allowed herself a rare smile. "We've only just begun, Maya. Let's go home." As their shuttle departed from the Council station, Sarah looked out into the endless stars, feeling the weight of humanity's potential. The greatest discovery was still waiting for them, back on Earth, where the real work had only just begun. The hidden prototype. As the shuttle cruised through the vastness of space, Sarah Chen gazed out at the endless field of stars. The distant Council station had already disappeared behind them, its glittering lights fading into the void. A quiet satisfaction began to settle over her. They had done it. Humanity had broken through. The Chen-Patel theorem had cracked open the door to interdimensional science, and though the Galactic Council had rejected it, they had unknowingly set humanity on a path that would change the very fabric of the galaxy. But that was only the beginning. What awaited them on Earth was the true masterpiece, the project that would prove humanity's worth to the galaxy once and for all. Sarah turned to Maya, who sat beside her, eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement. 2 weeks, Maya murmured. "It's finally ready." Sarah nodded. 2 weeks, and the prototype will change everything. The Council won't even know what hit them. The prototype was Earth's best-kept secret, a 7-dimensional starship, constructed using the very principles laid out in the Chen-Patel theorem. While the galaxy's most advanced species struggled to master the 4th dimension, humanity had taken a leap of faith, building a ship capable of navigating 7 dimensions simultaneously. It was a craft so advanced that it defied every rule known to the Council, and it was only a matter of time before the rest of the galaxy would have to reckon with it. They had kept it hidden from prying eyes, inside a top-secret facility, buried beneath the surface of Earth's largest moon. The facility was a marvel of human ingenuity, equipped with cutting-edge technology to harness the power of seven-dimensional space. No one, except for the select few involved in the project, knew of its existence, and even fewer knew what the Starship was truly capable of. Sarah's mind wandered back to the moment when she and Maya first stumbled upon the breakthrough that would lead to the Starship's design. It had been years of frustration, trial, and error, but it had all started to come together the day they discovered the key: interdimensional energy manipulation. With the power of 7 dimensions at their disposal, they could manipulate not just space, but time itself. A ship that could navigate the highest dimensions would have the ability to alter time, travel vast distances in an instant, and outmaneuver any threat in the galaxy. "What do you think the Council will do once they discover it?" Maya asked, her voice full of anticipation. "They'll have no choice but to acknowledge humanity's place in the galaxy," Sarah said with a confident smile. "This is what we've been working toward, Maya. The Council may have dismissed us today, but they're about to see what real innovation looks like." As their shuttle descended toward Earth's moon, the sprawling research facility came into view, nestled within a hollowed-out crater at the edge of the lunar landscape. The facility looked like a jagged scar on the surface, its metallic structures blending into the gray rocks of the moon. It was a place that had been built in secret, a fortress designed to withstand any potential threat, from alien forces to the dangers of their own overzealous ambitions. Inside the facility, the air was thick with a sense of anticipation. Engineers, scientists, and military personnel moved through the halls, preparing for the final phase of the Starship's activation. The hum of energy fields echoed through the corridors, and Sarah could feel the tension in the air. They had been preparing for this moment for years, and now everything was coming to a head. Sarah's boots clanged softly against the metal floor as she walked toward the central chamber, the heart of the facility. Maya was close behind her, practically vibrating with excitement. "Are we sure the system is stable?" Sarah asked as they passed through the security checkpoint, her voice laced with caution. "We've double-checked everything," Maya replied confidently. "The last stability issues were resolved last week. The ship is ready for testing." Inside the chamber stood the Starship, an awe-inspiring sight, even in its unfinished state. The vessel's frame was built from an alloy that could withstand the crushing pressures of 7-dimensional space. It shimmered with an ethereal glow, the result of energy flowing through its core. The ship was designed to fold space and time simultaneously, allowing it to navigate through multiple dimensions with ease. Its engines pulsed with raw power, ready to be unleashed. But what truly set this Starship apart was its ability to tap into the fabric of time itself. It was equipped with a dimensional resonance engine, capable of generating energy that could bend the very timeline around it. By folding through multiple dimensions, the ship would not only move through space, it would move through the past and future, shifting its position in time and space as though it were a mere thought. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered, staring at the vessel in awe. "Beautiful, yes," Sarah agreed, her voice low. "But it's also our ticket to rewriting the future." They moved to the control room, where the final checks were being made. The scientists and engineers working there greeted them with nods of respect, acknowledging their arrival. Sarah could feel the energy in the room change as they began the final preparations. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. "Initiating the dimensional resonance engine," a technician announced, his voice steady but laced with excitement. The ship's engines began to hum, their power growing with each passing second. The room's lights flickered as the energy from the engine flowed into the chamber, creating ripples in the air. Sarah watched intently, her heart racing. This was more than just a test. This was the moment that would prove humanity's place in the galaxy. "Ready for activation, Admiral," Maya said, her voice calm despite the storm of emotion that was evident in her eyes. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the culmination of everything they had worked for, the culmination of humanity's potential. With a single command, they would activate the Starship and show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of. "Activated," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. The room fell silent as the dimensional resonance engine roared to life. Energy cascaded out of the ship, enveloping the chamber in a brilliant flash of light. For a brief moment, Sarah felt as though the fabric of reality itself was being torn apart and reassembled, the boundaries between time and space fading away. And then, as suddenly as it began, the light dimmed. The ship stood before them, now fully activated and ready for the next phase of its journey. Humanity is about to change the galaxy, Sarah whispered to herself, a sense of destiny flooding through her. The Starship was not just a machine. It was a symbol of everything humanity had achieved and everything it was about to become. The Council would soon realize the truth. Humanity had arrived, and they were not going to be dismissed again. The hidden truth unveiled. The moon's surface was silent and still, a barren wasteland under the cold glow of distant stars. But inside the high-security facility, the air was electric with anticipation. The prototype Starship, now fully activated, hummed with immense power in the hangar bay. Its sleek design reflected the growing potential of human ingenuity. A starship that could navigate 7 dimensions, altering not just space, but the very threads of time. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window, watching as the engineers and scientists prepared for the first live test of the Starship. Her mind was sharp, every thought focused on the future. The Council's dismissal still burned in her mind, but that moment had only fueled her determination. They were about to show the galaxy something it had never seen before, a human breakthrough that would alter the course of history. Behind her, Dr. Maya Patel, whose work had made the Starship possible, paced nervously. Despite her usual confidence, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. "Do you think it will work, Sarah?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "It has to work," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "We've come too far for it not to. This ship is the key. The galaxy will have to reckon with us once it shows what it's truly capable of." A technician approached them, his face pale with excitement. "Admiral, Dr. Patel, we're ready to begin the test. The Starship is powered up and the resonance engine is primed. The team is standing by for activation." Sarah nodded. "Start the countdown. We need to know this ship is stable before we can take it out of the moon's orbit." Maya stood silently beside her, watching as the final preparations were made. The Starship's massive engines crackled with energy, and Sarah felt the ground beneath her feet vibrate as the ship's core resonated at an unseen frequency. For a brief moment, she wondered what would happen if the ship failed. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, but she quickly pushed that thought aside. There was no room for failure, not now. As the countdown reached its final seconds, Sarah's mind flashed back to the fateful day when the research had begun. The discovery that led to the creation of this ship had not been easy. It had taken years of sleepless nights, countless failures, and near-death moments of doubt. But through it all, Sarah and Maya had believed in one thing: humanity's potential. The resonance engine roared to life, filling the room with an intense hum. The light from the ship's core blowed into the chamber, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Then, with a blinding flash, the Starship seemed to vanish into thin air. Did it work? Maya gasped, her breath caught in her throat. For a brief moment, there was nothing. No sign of the ship, no ripple in the air, no sense that it had moved at all. But then, the ship reappeared. Not in the same place where it had been, but hundreds of miles away, right in front of them, hovering above the surface of the moon. It had folded through the fabric of space-time and re-emerged almost instantaneously. The engineers in the control room erupted into cheers, and Maya let out a triumphant laugh. "We did it. It actually worked." Sarah's heart raced, but she couldn't allow herself to get swept up in the moment. This was just the first test. What really mattered was the potential of what they had achieved. The Starship's ability to fold space and time had proven itself in this test. But now they had to push further. They had to explore what the ship could truly do. and whether its systems could handle the immense stresses of multidimensional travel. "Let's take it further," Sarah said, her voice filled with resolve. "We need to see how far this ship can really go. Let's open the dimensional gates." Maya hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "Okay, but we'll need to be careful. If the ship's systems aren't stable, opening too many dimensional gates could destabilize the core." "We'll take it slow," Sarah said, already moving toward the control panel. "We've come this far. Now let's see just how far we can go." Back in the control room, Sarah and Maya stood side by side, watching as the ship was moved into position for the next phase of the test. The resonance engine pulsed again, this time more intensely. The ship's energy levels spiked as it began to open multiple dimensional gates at once. Each gate was a doorway to another layer of reality, another dimension, all coexisting within the fabric of the universe. The starship began to vibrate with raw energy as the dimensional fields rippled around it. In the blink of an eye, the ship began to shift, not just in space, but through the very essence of time itself. The engineers' monitors began to flicker and flash, showing data that was impossible to interpret, measurements of time and space, bending in ways that no one had ever seen before. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was it, the true test. The ship was not just navigating space, it was manipulating time. The starship wasn't just moving across the galaxy, it was moving through time, bending the flow of events to its will. "Are you seeing this?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded, her eyes glued to the monitors. The ship was not just jumping from point to point, it was traversing different moments in time. For a brief instant, they could see the ship in multiple locations, overlapping like a dream. One moment, it was in the present, hovering above the moon. The next, it was in the past, back in Earth's orbit, before the facility had even been built. Then, the unimaginable happened. The starship flickered, and for a split second, it disappeared completely. No warning, no signs, just a sudden, eerie silence. The monitors went dark, and the technicians in the room froze in shock. "Where did it go?" one of them asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Before anyone could answer, the starship reappeared, this time in a place no one expected. It was not on the moon, not in orbit, and not even in the galaxy they knew. The ship had torn through dimensions, pulled through by the sheer power of its resonance engine, and it had ended up in a place beyond known space, a space so alien, so unfamiliar, that even Sarah's sharp mind could not comprehend it. What is this?" Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. The view outside the ship was nothing like anything Sarah had ever seen. The stars were different, strange constellations that defied logic. The colors of the nebula were more vivid, the shapes of distant worlds unfamiliar. And in the distance, a dark, shifting mass pulsed like a living thing, radiating an energy that was both beautiful and terrifying. "This is beyond our understanding," Sarah murmured, her voice filled with awe and dread. For the first time since their journey began, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They had crossed into uncharted territory, a place where no human had ever been, where no species had ever dared to go. "We've opened something we weren't meant to," Maya whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "We've gone too far." Sarah clenched her fists, her mind racing. The prototype starship had taken them further than they had ever imagined, but they had entered a realm that was far more dangerous than they could have anticipated. And now, they were not just facing the unknown. They were about to confront something far darker and more powerful than any threat they had ever encountered. The galaxy would never be the same. The cosmic rift. The ship trembled as the strange, otherworldly energy swirled around them, like a vast cosmic storm. Sarah Chen gripped the control panel, her knuckles white, as the starship hummed and pulsed with unfamiliar power. Maya stood beside her, eyes wide with disbelief, staring at the alien vista outside the viewport. What they had encountered was beyond anything they had prepared for. A realm that bent the laws of physics, a place where time, space, and matter were no longer predictable. "Where are we?" Maya's voice was shaky, laced with fear. This can't be real. We're not in any sector I've ever seen on the maps." Sarah's gaze was fixed on the dark mass looming ahead, its vast tendrils reaching into the fabric of space, twisting reality itself. It radiated an unnatural energy, a force that felt like it was alive, breathing, pulsing, alive with purpose. The moment the starship entered this realm, everything around them had shifted. The stars were dimmer here, their positions wrong. The nebulae were swirling, but not like any celestial gas clouds Sarah had ever seen. These weren't just distant cosmic phenomena. They were alive with motion, like they were watching them, waiting. "We're not just in another part of the galaxy," Sarah murmured, her voice grim. "We've crossed into a different dimension. This place, it's not governed by our physics." The resonance engine had gone haywire the moment they entered this space, and the starship's instruments were blinking erratically, displaying data that defied comprehension. Distortions appeared on the screens, time loops, gravitational anomalies, echoes of alternate realities. The laws of nature didn't apply here. The dark mass ahead of them grew larger, its shape shifting constantly, never settling into a single form. The more Sarah looked at it, the more it seemed to reach out to them, pulling them in. The feeling was suffocating, a pressure building from all sides, as though this realm itself was trying to consume them. But they weren't alone. From the corner of her eye, Sarah noticed strange patterns moving across the starship's hull. Shadows, almost like entities, flickered in and out of existence, coiling around the ship. "We're being watched," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The ship's systems were warning them of rising energy levels and increasing instability. The ship was beginning to slip, just slightly, between the cracks of reality. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into something much older and far more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered. "This ship is pulling us deeper into it," Sarah said, her voice growing more urgent. "The resonance engine. It's like it's feeding off this place, trying to stabilize us. We need to get out of here, or we cooled." A sudden jolt interrupted her, and the entire starship shook violently. The monitors went haywire as the starship's core flared with energy. For a split second, everything went completely black, and the hum of the engine disappeared. When the lights flickered back on, Sarah's stomach dropped. The dark mass had moved. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the ship's intercom system. It was not human. It was older, more ancient. The sound reverberated in their minds, sending a chill down their spines. It was as though the voice was speaking directly into their very beings, bypassing their ears and entering their consciousness. "You are trespassing." The voice was accompanied by a sudden surge of power, a pulse of energy so immense that it threatened to tear the ship apart. The resonance engine screamed in protest as its systems were overwhelmed by the alien presence. The entire ship lurched violently, as though it were being drawn toward the source of the voice. "We need to get control back," Maya shouted, panic rising in her voice. Sarah slammed her hands down on the control panel, trying to regain some sense of control. The starship's gravity control flickered, and the lights dimmed again as the resonance engine continued to fail. Outside the viewport, the dark mass loomed larger, more defined, its surface now resembling a vast, swirling storm of energy. It was like a black hole, but far more ominous, alive, aware, watching them. "This is no ordinary rift," Sarah said, struggling to stay calm. "Whatever that thing is, it's not just an energy anomaly. It's alive. It's trying to communicate with us." "Communicate?" Maya asked, disbelief in her voice. "How do you?" Before Sarah could respond, the starship was rocked by another violent jolt. The hull groaned under the stress, and alarms blared throughout the ship. They had lost all power to the engines. "We need to leave now," Sarah ordered, her voice steely with command. "Activate the jump. Open a portal. We can't fight this. We're getting out of here." Maya's hands flew over the controls, attempting to reroute power to the jump drive, but the systems were still unstable. "It's no use. We can't generate enough power. The rift is siphoning everything. If we try to jump now, we'll just get stuck here forever." The voice from the rift echoed again, this time louder and more insistent. "You do not belong here. Return to your dimension." The words felt like an ultimatum, a command from something far more ancient than anything they had ever encountered. Sarah's mind raced. She knew they had to get out of this place, but the Starship's systems were failing. The rift was absorbing everything: energy, matter, and even time. It was as if they were in a living cosmic maw, and there was no way out. In desperation, Sarah turned to Maya. "We have to find a way to fight back. Can we use the resonance engine to destabilize the rift? Maybe reverse the flow of energy?" Maya was already typing furiously on the console. "I'm trying, but we don't have much time. Whatever this thing is, it's not letting go." The Starship was now caught in a powerful gravitational pull, the fabric of space around them warping in ways that felt unnatural. Sarah could see the fabric of reality bending around the rift, pulling in pieces of stars, planets, and even time itself. It was as if the universe was being unraveled and woven back together in strange, distorted patterns. "This is beyond anything we've ever studied," Maya said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "Whatever this force is, it's rewriting the very laws of nature." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, drawing a deep breath. There was no more time for hesitation. If they couldn't stop the rift, it would consume them, and perhaps everything else in its path. They had to fight fire with fire. The prototype Starship was humanity's greatest creation, and now it had to prove its worth. "Prepare the dimensional core for a full release," Sarah commanded, her voice firm with resolve. "We'll overload the resonance engine. It's our only chance." Maya hesitated for a moment, her fingers hovering over the control panel. "It's risky. The resonance engine might not survive the overload. We could lose everything." Sarah's eyes flashed with determination. "We have no choice. If we don't stop this now, we won't have anything left to lose." With a grim nod, Maya began the sequence. The Starship's systems whined in protest as the core began to power up, energy crackling through the ship's veins. The dark mass outside them seemed to pulse in response, sensing their desperation, reacting to the escalating energy levels. The rift was feeding off their attempts to escape, but this time, they weren't going to let it win. "On my mark, release the core," Sarah commanded. Maya's fingers flew across the controls, and Sarah braced herself for what was to come. The ship shook violently as the resonance engine reached its peak, its energy levels spiraling out of control. With one final push, they released everything. There was a blinding flash of light. The rift screamed, a deep primal sound that reverberated across space. The Starship was thrown back, hurtling through dimensions in a violent burst of energy. For a split second, Sarah thought they were lost, torn apart by the cosmic force. But then, as quickly as it had begun, the light faded. The ship lurched back into space, an unfamiliar space, but one that felt safer, more stable. The rift was gone. Sarah and Maya both exhaled in relief, their bodies shaking with the aftermath of the chaos. "We did it," Maya whispered. But Sarah wasn't so sure. As the stars outside the viewport slowly returned to their familiar positions, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed them. The rift was gone, but its mark on the galaxy might only just be beginning. Echoes of the rift. The hum of the Starship's engines was strangely soothing now that the rift had faded from view. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched out in their familiar patterns, untouched by the chaos they had just endured. For a moment, it felt as though nothing had changed, as though they had simply drifted through a strange, fevered dream. But Sarah knew better. The journey had altered something deep within the ship, and the echoes of the rift still lingered in the very core of their craft. "We're not alone," Sarah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya turned toward her, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "We made it out. The rift's gone." Sarah shook her head, her expression grim. "It's not the rift I'm worried about. I'm talking about them." The word hung in the air like a warning. Maya's eyes widened as realization dawned on her. They had both felt it, the strange sensation that they were being watched, followed by something that didn't belong in their universe. It wasn't just the rift's gravitational pull or the strange energy that had distorted their Starship systems. No, this presence was far more insidious. It had followed them through the dimensional breach, and it had left a mark on the ship that neither of them could explain. Maya quickly turned back to her console, her fingers flying over the controls as she ran diagnostic checks on every system. But the more she scanned, the more her unease grew. The sensors were picking up odd readings, flickers in the fabric of space around the ship, subtle distortions that shouldn't be there. "We've got anomalies," Maya said, her voice tight with tension. "But they're not like anything I've seen before. It's almost like the ship is connected to something. Or someone." "Someone," Sarah echoed, her eyes narrowing. "You mean, like a presence? A conscious entity?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "It's like a pulse, a pattern of energy that resonates with the ship's core. It's not external. It's coming from within the ship. It feels alive." The words hung in the air, heavy with the implications of what that could mean. Sarah felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The rift had been bad enough, a cosmic tear in the fabric of reality itself, but now something else was at play, something that might have followed them back from the edge of existence. "Is it the resonance engine?" Sarah asked, her voice urgent. "Could it be that the engine absorbed some of the rift's energy? We're not sure what we were dealing with back there." Maya hesitated, tapping away at her console. "I don't think so. The resonance engine's energy is stable now. The fluctuations were due to the rift's instability, but it's not the engine that's causing these pulses. It's something else, something we can't identify. It's like a signal. A very faint one, but it's there." Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't just an unexpected consequence of their near-disastrous encounter with the rift. No, this was something far more troubling. If whatever had followed them was still aboard their ship, it meant they were not safe. They might have escaped the rift, but that didn't mean they were out of danger. "Can we trace it?" Sarah asked, her eyes scanning the room for any hint of what they might do next. Maya looked back at her, her face drawn with concern. "I can try, but this is unlike any signal I've ever encountered. It's erratic, changing frequencies. It's almost like it's adapting to our systems. Whatever it is, it's intelligent. It's probing us." The word stung Sarah like a slap in the face. An intelligent, probing entity. That was the last thing they needed right now. "How long until we're in the clear?" Sarah pressed, trying to keep her voice steady. "We can't just sit here waiting for it to find us. If we're being hunted, we need to get out of here now," Maya agreed. "But I'm not sure we can just jump back into normal space. The rift's energy left behind a wake, an energy signature that's not easy to shake off. It could be calling the entity to us. We might attract its attention even more if we try to jump." Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't afford to wait. Not with something lurking inside their ship. She wasn't about to let this unknown presence hunt them down, not when they had barely survived the rift's destructive forces. "We need to think. We need to outsmart it. If it's using the ship's own systems to track us, maybe we can feed it a false signal, get it to focus on a decoy." Maya's face lit up with understanding. Yes, we could redirect the ship's energy output, overload the auxiliary systems to create a decoy signal. If the entity's probing us through the ship's systems, it won't know we're faking it. Sarah nodded, her mind already working through the logistics. Do it. But be quick. I want that decoy up and running before whatever it is gets any closer. Maya immediately dove into the controls, working with a sense of urgency that only someone who had been in life or death situations could master. The tension was palpable, thickening the air between them as every second ticked by. Outside the ship, the stars drifted lazily by, unaware of the struggle taking place inside. But inside, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, its presence growing stronger with every passing moment. Maya's fingers were a blur over the console as she rerouted the ship's energy, creating a complex illusion that would trick the entity into thinking they were somewhere they weren't. But she was running out of time. If the entity grew too close, it might recognize the deception. If it was intelligent enough to probe their systems, it might also be able to counteract their attempts to confuse it. Done, Maya said, her voice tight with exertion. The decoy signal is active. Now we just need to wait and hope it works. Sarah took a deep breath, watching the readouts with bated breath. The ship's energy levels were dangerously high, but the false signal was now broadcasting across every frequency, every wavelength, designed to mimic their ship's exact patterns, but in a different location. For a few moments, there was nothing. Then, slowly, the pulses from within the ship began to shift. They were no longer centered on the core of the ship. Instead, they were moving toward the decoy signal, just as they'd hoped. Maya exhaled in relief. It's working. The entity's drawn to the false signal. Good, Sarah said, her tone flat. Now we need to get as far away from it as possible. As soon as it's locked on to the decoy, we'll jump, full power, no hesitation. Maya nodded, keeping her eyes fixed on the monitors. We're almost there. Just a few more seconds. The tension in the ship was palpable, every sound amplified as they held their breath. The entity was drawn to the decoy. And now, the Starship had a chance to escape, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the last of whatever was lurking in the shadows of space. The ship's systems roared back to life, the jump drive primed and ready. But Sarah knew this was only a temporary victory. There were things out there, beyond their understanding, and the rift had only been the beginning. Once they escaped, Sarah was determined to find answers. Because if they had crossed into a new dimension, if they had come into contact with something beyond the boundaries of their reality, then there was much more to this story than they had ever realized. And it was only just beginning. The awakening of the void. The ship was quiet now. The hum of the engines had settled into a steady rhythm, the constant pulse of the decoy signal continuing to radiate through the void. Sarah watched the stars slip past, her mind far from the comfort of their safe escape. Even as the decoy signal drew the entity further from their path, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that their actions had set something into motion, something far bigger than they realized. She stood by the observation window, staring at the distant specks of light. Each star was a beacon, a sun, a planet waiting to be discovered. But now, each one felt more like a distant eye, watching them. The cold silence of deep space pressed in from all sides, and for the first time, Sarah felt truly alone. Maya, she called softly, breaking the silence. Have you found anything new about the anomaly? Maya's voice came from the doorway, weary but determined. I've been running scans nonstop. The decoy signal is holding, but I'm not sure how much longer. The entity, it's intelligent, but it's also persistent. It's not just a being. It's like it's a force, a presence, and I think it's learning from us, adapting to our movements. Sarah turned, her eyes narrowing. Adapting? What do you mean? Maya hesitated, clearly grappling with her thoughts. The ship's systems, they're not just detecting it anymore. I'm seeing traces of the anomaly in the ship's structural integrity. It's almost like the ship itself is being influenced by this force. Our systems are responding to it. It's not just an external presence anymore. It's inside. The implications of those words hit Sarah like a blow to the chest. Something was happening within their very ship, something that couldn't be explained by simple energy surges or rift-related anomalies. This wasn't just a cosmic threat from another dimension. It was something far more personal, far more dangerous. "We need to isolate it," Sarah said, turning toward the bridge. "If this force is somehow integrating with the ship's systems, we can't afford to let it continue. We need to sever the connection before it grows stronger." Maya nodded. "Agreed. But it won't be easy. The more I try to isolate the signal, the more the ship's systems get tangled up in it. It's like it's threading itself through the very fabric of our technology. I'm not sure how to stop it without causing a system-wide collapse." Sarah's fingers tightened into fists. They had already survived the rift, survived the entity's probing, but now they were faced with an entirely new challenge, something that had become part of their ship, something they couldn't simply outrun or trick. This was no longer just an external force. They were facing something far more insidious, something that wanted to merge with them. "Then we'll have to cut it out," Sarah said, her voice steely. "We won't be able to isolate it through traditional means. We need to target the anomaly at its source." "The ship's core." Maya's eyes widened in alarm. "The core? Are you sure that's the best idea? If we damage the core—" "We don't have a choice," Sarah interrupted, her gaze hardening. "If this force becomes too integrated, we'll lose control of everything. The core is the only place where we can cut off its influence before it takes over entirely." There was a long, tense silence. Maya knew the risks, but Sarah could see the determination in her eyes. They had made it this far by fighting through the unknown, by trusting in their instincts. And now, they had to face their most dangerous trial yet. "We'll need to override the core's security systems," Maya said, her voice quiet but resolute. "We'll have to divert power to the containment fields and use the energy as a pulse to sever the connection. But it's risky. There's a chance we could lose everything, Sarah." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I'll take the risk. Let's go." The two of them moved quickly, working together in silence as they navigated the dark corridors of the ship. The familiar layout had never felt so alien, so oppressive. As they approached the heart of the Starship, the resonance engine, Sarah's stomach twisted with anticipation. This was the heart of humanity's greatest achievement, the culmination of decades of research, the engine that had powered their leap into the stars. If they were wrong, it would be their doom. But if they were right, they arrived at the core's control room, where the large central conduit pulsed with energy. The ship's resonance engine, built to harness the power of the dimensions themselves, hummed softly, a testament to the marvel of human engineering. Maya immediately went to work, her fingers flying over the control panel, her face drawn in concentration. The lights above flickered briefly, as if the ship itself was resisting the commands being input into the system. "Are you seeing it?" Maya asked, not looking up. "The energy field around the core is destabilizing. It's trying to fight back." Sarah's eyes flicked to the console, where strange, swirling patterns had begun to appear on the readouts. "It's the entity," she said, a knot forming in her chest. "It's aware of what we're doing." The resonance engine's hum grew louder, more intense. The air in the room seemed to grow thick, charged with an energy that felt both electric and unnatural. Something was happening. Something was awakening. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered again, and the walls began to shake. Sarah grabbed onto a nearby console to steady herself. The ship was reacting violently to their interference, as if it were fighting against them. "Keep going," Sarah shouted over the noise. "We have to do this, Maya. We can't let it win." Maya's face was pale, but her hands didn't falter. "Almost there," she muttered, her voice strained. "Just need to override the last protocol." And then a deep guttural sound resonated from the walls of the ship. It wasn't mechanical, but it felt like it was coming from somewhere deep within the Starship itself, as if the ship was alive. The temperature in the room dropped, and the lights flashed a brilliant blue before going out completely. Only the glow of the console screens illuminated their faces in the otherwise pitch-black room. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the shaking stopped. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. The lights flickered back to life. The resonance engine was silent. For a long moment, neither Sarah nor Maya said anything. The ship was still. The energy pulse was gone. But Sarah could feel the change. They had done it. They had severed the connection. But something told her this was only the beginning. The force was still out there, still waiting, still watching. Whatever they had unleashed, whatever they had disturbed in the rift, it wasn't finished with them. They had merely delayed the inevitable. "We've bought ourselves some time," Maya said quietly, her fingers still lingering on the console. "But it's not over. Not by a long shot." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "I know. But now, at least we're ready." They stood in silence for a moment longer, staring at the now still core of the resonance engine. The ship was calm, but the void outside, that was where their true battle lay. The rift was just the beginning. Now they would face the consequences of their actions, and they would face them together.